Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we'll be talking about how to make emotional chords. So starting off, we'll be talking about how much a difference the chord voicings and chord progression makes in your track. So here we have a pretty basic chord progression here. We have a 1 chord. If this was in the key of C, that would be a C major. We have a 5 chord, which is a G chord in C major, 6, A minor, and then 4, which is F, all in the key of C. But we are in the key of G sharp actually for this specific song. But yeah, we'll play a difference in how the chords sound in kind of like a basic form versus more of like suspended and using 7ths and 9ths. So here we go.
Always been afraid my best years have passed.
And then this is basically, I guess, in a more different form chord progression where we're using suspended, adds, and 7ths, 9ths, whatever you want to call them.
Always been afraid my best years have passed.
So you can see there's definitely a quite a significant difference in terms of choosing the notes that you use for your chord. And I'll definitely show you how to make these chords in just a sec, but I also want to touch on the chord progression itself will also make a difference in the emotion that you'll have in your track. So here I have a similar chord voicing in the terms of the way I've written the chord, but a different chord progression. So this chord progression here, actually I'll move it to C to make it easier to read. But yeah, this chord progression here is basically the 6, which is A minor in the C major, a 4, which is a F major, a 1, which is C, and then 5, which is G. So we're going to move it back to the G sharp key and then kind of listen to how it makes a difference in the motion that you feel for this track.
Always been afraid my best years have passed.
So it definitely works, but it definitely gives a different emotion, and I'll kind of addition the first chord stack that we had.
Always been afraid my best years have passed.
So both chord progressions can technically work. It's kind of up to you which one you like the most, and maybe one might sound better than the other. But nonetheless, you know, different chord progressions will evoke different emotions. So it's very important to kind of have that chord progression down because it's essentially your foundation for your track. But yeah, let's definitely get into how I kind of created the voicing for the chords. So yeah, basically here we have the same chords from earlier in their most basic form. I usually don't do this anymore, but you can definitely do it if it's something that you like. But basically just take the 3 of each chord and move it up an octave. And it'll kind of sound like this. And you can move this down an octave. And up next is kind of like my go-to technique, or whatever you want to call it. But basically, I take the 1 of the key and have it drone over every chord, basically. So the 1 of G sharp would be G sharp. And just basically have that drone over every single note or chord rather. And then also what I also like to do is do the 5 of the chord, or sorry, the key, which is the D sharp. And have that basically playing for every chord as well. And technically you can even leave the 3s if you want. Those will work. I usually like to take this one out. And this one here is basically a suspended 4. How I know that, I'll move this to the C to make things easier. So basically in the key of C, everything's a white note. So basically a suspended 4 would be the 4th note counting from the 1st of the chord. So the number 1 of the chord is G because this is a G major chord. So it's a G major, G and B. And basically how I know it's going to be a suspended 4 is basically counting up 4 times in the key. So again, everything in C is white notes. So 1 being G, 2 is A, 3 is B, and then C is 4. So suspended 4, because basically you take the C, but rather than having the C play down here, just had it played up an octave. So that's basically kind of how I'd kind of go about, creating chords and the voicings of your chord progressions. Additionally, you can even try adding mini melodies. So yeah, something like that, whatever you kind of like the most in terms of creating the notes. And also do note that when I write these chords, I'm also thinking about how a person would play the piano. So for example, like no one's going to be able to reach like a note all the way up here, for example, right? So the way that I wrote these chords is basically the left hand is playing the 1 and 5, and supposedly the right hand can play these notes here. We're basically just trying to make it, as human as possible. And then definitely another thing is the key of the song too can completely change the feel of your track. So say for example, this was actually, just for example, this was maybe 2 keys up, and then we'll move this 2 keys up, and basically this is what it'll kind of sound like.
Always been afraid, my best years have passed.
Already you can kind of see it doesn't really give the same feel. Obviously the vocal's a little up since it's not supposed to be in that key anyway. But, versus this key here.
Always been afraid, my best years have passed.
So yeah, I mean, when you're making your tracks too, you can always try transposing, the vocal or whatever, a few keys up or a few keys down, depending on what feel you're looking for. And then another tip to kind of make it more emotional as well is even choosing the right sounds and instruments, right? Like if I had a different type of piano, for example, like let's just try this one. It works, but like it doesn't really give the same exact feel.
Always been afraid, my best years have passed.
Like because the chords are there, it already kind of sets the tone, but the instrument kind of takes away from that emotion a little bit, rather than playing, more, I guess, somber type of instrument.
Always been afraid, my best years have passed.
And then kind of like add it all together with the bass and the kick snare and stuff like that, and the vocal ambient ad-libs or whatever.
Always been afraid, my best years have passed. They say the good old days.
And then additionally, the fourth tip, I guess, is also kind of like humanizing your pianos. So here I have a velocity here. Basically having the low range around 12 to 30 and the high to about 71. This basically changes the or even 0 probably would even work too, but this basically changes like the velocity numbers and basically how hard it's played for when the chord progressions are played. And then here I kind of adjusted the drive, so rather than being a linear kind of curve, I made it a bit more with like a little bell curve or whatever you want to call it, just so it can kind of have a more organic feel to it. And then additionally, I've also added a swing with a timing around 22%, probably 15% can work too. Kind of use your ears for it. This basically has the keys or notes played at different times, so they're not all played at the same time. We're trying to reenact how a person would play the piano. And I'll kind of addition it without the groove and the velocity, and then with both of them.
Always been afraid, my best years have passed. Always been afraid, my best years have passed.
So yeah, you can definitely hear a significant difference when you have those on and off. One thing I forgot to mention is that when you're creating these chords, you definitely can't have suspended twice. Like you want to be able to use suspended, like, you know, in a way where it's not overdoing it. So for example, let's say we're going to do another suspended here for the F chord. And this is basically what it kind of sounds like if you were to both have two suspendeds at the same time, or one after the other rather. Like it could work, but it's just like too much tension and it kind of wants to resolve. So that's why we take out the suspended. And then it finally resolves basically. So yeah, that's really it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I definitely want to do this full time, so it would be greatly appreciated if you can help me out with that. Also, please follow me on my social media channels. I usually post shorter form music production, EDM, future bass production tips. And also please join my Discord server. I'll leave the links in the description below. Thank you so much again. Until next time, much love. Peace out.